At 5:47 a.m. this morning, FBI and ICE agents breached the door of a luxury penthouse in downtown Miami and arrested one of the most powerful couples in American politics. Senator Michael Harrison, four-term United States Senator, chairman of the Banking Committee, net worth officially listed at $12 million, and his wife, Elena Ramirez Harrison, former executive at Continental Trust Bank, financial advisor, the elegant, sophisticated face of the couple's charitable foundation. But the FBI wasn't there because of their politics or their philanthropy. They were there because Elena Ramirez Harrison had spent the last 9 years running the largest money laundering operation in Western Hemisphere history. $22.3 billion. Cartel money, drug money, blood money, washed clean through a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and legitimate businesses. And Senator Harrison didn't just know about it, he protected it. Used his position on the banking. Penthouse raid seized $17 million. Penthouse raid seized $17 million in cash. Gold bars worth $8 million. Encrypted phones, ledgers documenting thousands of transactions, and evidence linking Elena directly to the Sinaloa Cartel, CJNG, and criminal organizations across Mexico and Colombia. This is the story of how a United States senator married a cartel banker, how they built an empire on blood money, and how a single whistleblower inside Continental Trust Bank brought the entire operation crashing down. Michael Harrison was elected to the United States Senate in 2008. A rising star in politics, Harvard Law, former prosecutor, tough on crime, pro-business. The kind of candidate who appealed to both moderates and conservatives. He won his first election with 53% of the vote. By his second term, he was chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, one of the most powerful positions in Washington, overseeing financial regulations, banking laws, money laundering enforcement. His net worth in 2008 was approximately $2 million, mostly from his legal career and investments. By 2024, it had grown to $12 million officially, but the real number was much higher, hidden in offshore accounts, buried in shell companies, disguised as legitimate business ventures. And it all started when he met Elena Ramirez. Elena Ramirez was born in Medellin, Colombia in 1978. She grew up during the height of the drug wars. Her father was a banker. Her uncle worked for Pablo Escobar's organization as a financial advisor. Elena learned early that money doesn't care where it comes from. It only cares where it goes. She was brilliant with numbers, graduated top of her class, got her MBA at Universidad de los Andes, moved to Miami in 2002, and got a job at Continental Trust Bank as a junior financial analyst. Within 5 years, she was a senior vice president, managing high net worth clients, overseeing international transactions, moving millions of dollars across borders every single day. And that's when the cartels noticed her. In 2010, a representative from the Sinaloa Cartel approached Elena with a proposal. They had a problem, billions of dollars in cash sitting in Mexico, drug proceeds that needed to be moved into the United States financial system, laundered, made to look legitimate. They needed someone with access to American banks, someone who understood international finance, someone who could move money without triggering red flags. They offered Elena 5% of everything she laundered, 5% of billions. She should have reported the approach to federal authorities, should have called the FBI, should have protected her career and her freedom. Instead, she said yes. The operation was sophisticated. Elena didn't just accept bags of cash and deposit them into accounts that would be too obvious. Instead, she created a network. Shell companies registered in Panama, the Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, legitimate-looking businesses, import-export firms, real estate holding companies, technology startups. Cartel money would flow into these companies disguised as revenue from legitimate business activities. Then Elena would move the money through multiple accounts, layering transactions, obscuring the source, making it nearly impossible to trace. From there, the money would enter the United States financial system through Continental Trust Bank, investment accounts, commercial loans, real estate purchases, clean money, ready to be spent on luxury goods, property, and investments. Elena's first transaction for the Sinaloa Cartel was $50 million. She moved it through 4 shell companies and 3 countries in less than a week. She earned $2.5 million for that single transaction. And that was just the beginning. Over the next 9 years, Elena Ramirez would launder approximately $22.3 billion for the Sinaloa Cartel, CJNG, and smaller criminal organizations across Latin America. Her personal take? Approximately $1.1 billion. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed protection. She needed someone who could shield her from investigations, someone with political power. She needed Michael Harrison. Elena and Michael met at a fundraiser in Miami in 2012. He was running for his second Senate term. She was a successful banker, elegant, sophisticated, well-connected in Miami's business community. They started dating, got married in 2014, a beautiful wedding, 300 guests, covered by Society magazines. Nobody suspected that the bride was laundering billions for Mexican cartels. At first, Michael probably didn't know. Elena was careful, kept her criminal activities separate from her legitimate banking work. But at some point, he found out. Maybe he saw financial records. Maybe she told him. Maybe he just figured it out because the money kept growing and the lifestyle kept improving. And he made a choice. He could report his wife to federal authorities, end his marriage, destroy his political career, or he could join her, protect her, use his position to ensure she never got caught. He chose the money. As chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Michael Harrison had enormous influence over financial regulations and enforcement. He could block legislation that would make money laundering harder. He could apply pressure to regulatory agencies to go easy on certain institutions. He could ensure that investigations into Continental Trust Bank never gained traction. And that's exactly what he did. In 2016, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network began investigating Continental Trust Bank for suspicious transaction patterns. Millions of dollars moving through accounts with no clear business purpose. Transactions structured to avoid reporting requirements. The investigation was gaining momentum. Subpoenas were being prepared. Federal prosecutors were building a case. And then Senator Harrison intervened. He called the director of FinCEN, suggested the investigation was politically motivated, implied that Continental Trust was being unfairly targeted, applied pressure. The investigation slowed, then stalled, then quietly disappeared. Elena's operation continued without interruption. Over the next 8 years, Harrison would intervene at least 6 times to protect his wife's money laundering network, killing investigations, blocking regulations, ensuring that federal law enforcement couldn't touch Continental Trust Bank. And in exchange, he lived a life that his Senate salary of $174,000 could never afford. The Harrison Penthouse in Miami was worth $27 million, purchased in 2018 through a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, 4,000 square feet, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, marble floors, designer furniture, a wine collection worth $500,000. They also owned a vacation home in Aspen, $8 million, a beach house in the Hamptons, $12 million, a ranch in Montana, $6 million, all purchased through shell companies, all funded by cartel money. Michael drove a Bentley, Elena drove a Maserati. They traveled first class to Europe, Asia, the Caribbean. They wore designer clothes, attended exclusive events, donated to charities to maintain their image as philanthropic community leaders. Nobody questioned where the money came from, because Michael Harrison was a United States Senator and Elena was a respected banker. But the FBI was watching, and they were building a case. The investigation started with a whistleblower, a compliance officer at Continental Trust Bank named David Chen. Chen had been monitoring Elena's accounts for months, and he'd noticed patterns that didn't make sense. Large wire transfers from shell companies with no apparent business activity. Transactions structured just below reporting thresholds. Money moving through multiple countries before landing in the United States. Chen flagged the transactions, reported them to his supervisors, expected the bank to investigate. Instead, he was told to stop asking questions, to focus on other accounts, to mind his own business. That's when Chen realized something was very wrong. This wasn't just suspicious activity. This was institutional corruption. The bank knew, and they were protecting it. In March 2023, David Chen contacted the FBI. He provided them with everything: transaction records, internal emails, communications between Elena and her supervisors, evidence that the bank knew about the money laundering and had actively covered it up. The FBI assigned the case to Special Agent Marcus Webb, 20 years with the Bureau, veteran of dozens of financial crime investigations. He knew how money laundering operations worked. Webb assembled a team: financial analysts, forensic accountants, agents with experience in international money laundering cases. They started digging, following the money, tracing transactions back through shell companies and offshore accounts, identifying the sources, and that's when they discovered the cartel connections. The money Elena was laundering wasn't just random criminal proceeds. It was coming directly from the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG, two of the most violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. Federal investigators traced wire transfers from shell companies in Panama back to businesses controlled by cartel operatives in Mexico. They found communications between Elena and cartel financial managers. They identified meetings in Miami, Mexico City, and Colombia. Elena wasn't just a banker doing a favor. She was a full partner in the operation, a cartel banker, and her husband, the United States Senator, was protecting her. The FBI obtained warrants to tap Elena's phones. They recorded conversations with cartel representatives, discussions about transaction amounts, complaints about delays, instructions on where to move money. They monitored her travel, documented trips to Mexico and Colombia that had no legitimate business purpose. They reviewed Senator Harrison's financial disclosure forms, found discrepancies, properties that weren't listed, income sources that didn't match his official statements. They interviewed Continental Trust Bank employees, people who had been pressured to ignore suspicious activity, people who knew what Elena was doing but were too afraid to speak up. By January 2025, the FBI had built an overwhelming case. 9 years of money laundering, $22.3 billion, direct connections to the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG, and evidence that Senator Michael Harrison had used his position to protect the operation. It was time to move. February 12, 2025, 5:30 a.m., FBI and ICE tactical teams took positions outside the Harrison Penthouse. Agents secured the building exits. Coast Guard boats blocked the marina to prevent escape by water. At exactly 5:47 a.m., federal agents breached the door. FBI, search warrant, everyone on the ground. Michael and Elena were in the master bedroom, sleeping. They woke to the sound of agents flooding into their home. Michael tried to assert his authority. "I'm a United States Senator. You can't just..." "Senator Harrison, we have a warrant for your arrest and your wife's arrest. Please put your hands behind your back." Elena said nothing, just stood there as agents handcuffed her. The search of the penthouse took 6 hours. Agents found $17 million in cash hidden in a safe behind a false wall, gold bars worth $8 million in a storage closet, encrypted phones, ledgers documenting thousands of transactions. They also found communications between Elena and cartel representatives, financial records showing money flowing from Mexico through shell companies into the United States. Everything the FBI needed to prove the case. Michael and Elena were transported to the FBI field office in Miami, booked, processed, charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Michael Harrison, United States Senator, was also charged with bribery and obstruction of justice for using his position to protect the operation. The news broke at 9 a.m. Every major network led with it. United States Senator arrested in cartel money laundering case. FBI raids Senator's penthouse, seizes $17 million cash. Senator's wife linked to Sinaloa Cartel. By noon, the Senate had convened an emergency session. Harrison's colleagues were calling for his immediate resignation. The Senate Ethics Committee announced an investigation. The president released a statement. If these charges are proven true, this represents one of the most serious betrayals of public trust in American history. Michael and Elena's attorneys filed motions for bond, argued they weren't flight risks, argued they had ties to the community. The prosecution countered that both defendants had access to offshore accounts with millions of dollars, that they had demonstrated a willingness to flee if given the opportunity, that they posed a danger to the community because their actions had facilitated drug trafficking that killed Americans. The judge denied bond. Both were remanded to federal custody pending trial. The investigation didn't stop with Michael and Elena. The FBI continued digging. They arrested 12 Continental Trust Bank executives and compliance officers who had helped facilitate the money laundering, people who had turned a blind eye.